Hey there, and welcome back to The Explainer. I'm absolutely pumped to be with you today. Look, if you're a focused learner who loves efficiency, you are in for a serious treat. We're taking a massive masterclass today, Escaping Autopilot and the Cycle of Growth, and we're going to distill the whole shebang down into actionable visual frameworks. We're talking about breaking out of that daily autopilot trap, totally mastering your personal cycle of growth, and figuring out how to build something really profound, even when the tools you've got are, well, kind of broken. Let's get right into it. I want to hit you right out of the gate with a pretty jarring question. Take a second and actually ask yourself, am I living today like it's just an obligation, or is it something more? Like, is your life right now just an automatic continuation of the past, or are you making a methodical move towards a future that absolutely lights you up? It is shockingly easy to just kind of fall into a trance, waking up day after day, accepting the parameters of a life you didn't even really design. We have got to snap out of that trance. To anchor today's explainer, we're looking at this super powerful thought from the Dalai Lama. It's a great reminder that, honestly, no one ever stops because they literally can't. They stop because they decide to. They look at this massive mountain ahead of them, get completely disheartened by how far away the finish line is, and they totally forget that the mountain is literally just a collection of little rocks. Success isn't about making these spectacular giant leaps. It's really just the act of hanging on and continuing to walk when everyone else would just let go. Okay. Let's dive into this. Section 1. Escaping the autopilot trap. If we actually want to evolve, we first have to recognize just how dangerous passive living really is. So many of us are living life exactly like a jellyfish, just sort of floating along with the tide, right? And sure, lacking a plan or not having any required output might feel like a burden lifted in the short term. But living as a spectator deprives you of the single most essential element of the human soul, which is personal agency. You can only look out the passenger window for so long before you start to wonder, what would it be like to actually get behind the wheel and drive this thing? And to get behind that wheel, we really have to understand a crucial distinction here: simple versus easy. Becoming the person you want to be is a simple process. The outcome is straightforward. But it is absolutely not easy. It requires massive, massive effort. Think about it like this. Walking is simple, right? The mechanics are super straightforward, one foot in front of the other. But hiking up a steep, jagged mountain? Not easy. The procedure didn't change, but the context sure did. And that takes real determination. Which brings us to Section 2, the power of accountability, the power within. This right here is the ultimate antidote to that whole jellyfish trap. It's wild to see how these two entirely different mindsets play out. The great Jim Rohn used to tell this brilliant story about two brothers who were raised by an abusive alcoholic father. So they grow up and one becomes abusive himself, while the other becomes this incredibly loving, supportive father. When asked why his life turned out that way, the abusive brother says, "Well, look at my childhood. How could you blame me?" But the loving brother is asked the exact same question, and he says, "Look at my childhood. How could I treat my family that way?" Will Smith actually shared a really similar realization about his own childhood, witnessing his father strike his mother, who then stood up and essentially said, "You can hit me, but you can't hurt me." The lesson here is paramount. You cannot control your starting point, and you definitely can't control unfair circumstances, but you and only you completely control where you go next. And this brilliantly illustrates why you have to shift your mindset from "it's happening to me" to "it's happening for me." Imagine a friend has someone steal from his business. When someone asks him what he's going to do about it, he replies, "If a snake bites you, are you going to chase it into the woods to get revenge, or are you going to get medical attention?" Chasing snakes into the woods, guys, that's victimhood. Even if you get, say, overlooked for a promotion at work, that is feedback. Extract the value, treat the snake bite, and just keep moving forward. All right, let's move to Section 3, the cycle of growth. Evolve and adapt. This is the core structural framework of our explainer today, the actual step-by-step logic behind how we transform. I want to walk you through this cyclical nature of growth because it's like a giant puzzle. Step 1 is simply realizing there's more out there. Step 2 requires the acquisition of courage to actually step into the unknown. Step 3 is making mistakes. Step 4 is finding the discipline to trust yourself even when you're failing. And Step 5 is the finale. Celebrate, adjust, and normalize your new reality. The absolute magic of this cycle is that once you conquer it, yesterday's ceiling becomes today's floor. The terrifying heights you once jumped to reach are now just the solid ground you walk on every single day. I want to zero in on Step 3 for a second. Mistakes. We fear mistakes, right? Because we think they mean embarrassment or that we lack direction. Our biology literally physically resists discomfort. But mistakes are precisely the curriculum you need to learn the new rules of the game as you evolve. Making mistakes means you are injecting yourself into the turbulence of progress. Really, it's the only true way to evolve. Moving into Section 4, the 22-second rule. Push your limits. Now let's shift into a highly tactical application to help you build the courage we were just talking about. 22. Just 22. Consider this story. A man is recovering from arm surgery, and he's trying to get back into shape on a treadmill, which, let's be honest, is torturous enough on a good day. But he developed this fascinating ritual. No matter the workout, whether it was a 30-minute run or a grueling hour-long sprint, he would always, without fail, add exactly 22 seconds to the end of the workout. When his mind was absolutely screaming to stop at the finish line, he pushed for just 22 more seconds. Now, what's really interesting here is why this simple rule actually works. Those stopping points we set for ourselves, they're entirely constructed fictions. We operate at a fraction of our true potential until we force ourselves to push just past that imaginary finish line. So it's not even about the physical benefit of 22 extra seconds of running. It's about the mental armor you build. You prove to yourself day after day that you always have just a little bit more to give. And that resilience armor brings us to our final act today, Section 5, building with what you have. Because listen, you do not need perfect conditions to start building your future. Just consider these specific constraints. Back in 1998, Johnny Resnick, the frontman of the Goo Goo Dolls, was asked to write a song for a movie soundtrack. At the time, his personal life was in total shambles. He was coming off a divorce, dealing with a terrible record deal where the label cut most of the money, he's suffering from major writer's block, and living out of a hotel. When he went to pitch his idea, he had exactly 2 lines of lyrics and a guitar with 2 broken strings. That was it. Talk about deeply flawed tools. But here's the thing. He didn't wait for a new guitar. He didn't wait to magically feel better. He moved forward only with what he had. And from those 2 broken strings, he wrote Iris, literally one of the greatest hit songs of the decade. When asked later how the chorus came together, he kind of shrugged and basically said, I don't know, the words just kind of worked. So the crucial point is, masterpieces are patchwork. You don't need to know exactly how step 2000 is going to work out. You just need to start patching the imperfect pieces together right now with sheer will. Because when you start building, for sure, the world is going to test you. Back in 480 BC, at the Battle of Thermopylae, a massive invading Persian army told a tiny, heavily outnumbered force of Spartans to lay down their weapons and surrender. The Spartan response was just 2 words, Mal and Lobby. Come and take them. Honestly, this is the ultimate metaphor for your own life. When the invading forces of chaos, doubt, and crazy adverse circumstances try to strip away your purpose and demand that you conform, you hold your ground. You hold on to your convictions and say, come and take them. Because as Thomas Edison reminds us here, progress is often incredibly slow. Sometimes it is completely invisible. You might be swinging the axe and feeling like you aren't making a dent in the tree at all, but giving up guarantees failure right before the breakthrough actually happens. Those swings and misses, they matter, because in the aggregate, they are literally chiseling your future self right out of stone. Which leaves us with this final provocative thought. You are not a spectator. You are the architect. You have the tools, however broken they might seem, and you have the power to stop drifting like a jellyfish. So, as we wrap up, I gotta ask you, are you ready to make today amazing? The choice is entirely yours. Step into the arena. Thanks so much for joining me on The Explainer today. Go build something incredible, and I'll catch you next time.